Whispers within the deepest corridors of the palace have recently brought to light a fascinating diplomatic maneuver. Analysts and royal insiders have been buzzing about the ultimate destiny of the oriental circlet, a magnificent tiara structured from intricate diamond arches and glowing lotus flowers set with rubies. For over a century, an unspoken but fiercely guarded rule has dictated that this masterpiece is reserved strictly for queens and queen consorts. Queen Camilla is the current sovereign consort. She holds the literal keys to the royal vaults. Yet, persistent theories suggest that behind closed doors, the palace recognizes a stark reality: to deploy their absolute maximum diplomatic soft power at the highest level of international state banquets, this exclusive design must eventually rest upon the hair of Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Why would the reigning queen consort ever agree to hand over such an exclusive, highly symbolic design? This is not a tale of sudden generosity or a casual loan. It is a calculated concession from an institution that has realized who truly wields the enduring legacy of Queen Elizabeth II. To understand this profound shift in the royal dynamic, we must look back to the foundation of this new era, the coronation in May 2023. This event served as a masterclass in the quiet clash between rigid royal protocol and the weight of public affection. On that day, Queen Camilla arrived wearing Queen Mary's crown, a breathtaking, historically dense, and constitutionally appropriate choice for a reigning consort stepping into her ultimate role. However, a highly publicized directive, often referred to by the press as a tiara ban, was placed on the rest of the royal women. The official palace statement cited the king's desire for a modernized, scaled-back ceremony that reflected the contemporary economic climate. Yet, royal analysts widely viewed this specific dress code as a highly effective method to ensure that the king and queen consort remained the undisputed visual focal point of the day. By removing tiaras from the equation, it guaranteed that no other royal women, specifically Catherine, could visually rival the sovereign couple with grand, historical diamonds. Protocol is a profound tool, and in this instance, it was utilized flawlessly to establish the new hierarchy. Catherine's response to this restriction was a masterstroke of non-verbal communication. Deprived of a traditional diamond tiara, she did not simply blend into the background. Instead, she chose a dimensional silver bullion and crystal floral headpiece. It was a striking, almost ethereal design that required no vault access to command the world's attention. Crucially, she paired this modern headpiece with a specific, emotionally charged accessory: Princess Diana's South Sea pearl and diamond drop earrings. Catherine does not reject diamonds. Rather, she rejects the idea that sheer carat weight alone equates to true influence. She understands that the power of royal jewelry lies not in outshining others with the largest stones, but in storytelling. By wearing Diana's earrings on a day defined by the new king and queen, she tapped directly into the public's deep-rooted emotional memory. It was a quiet, unassailable demonstration that the palace may have locked the tiaras away for the morning, but Catherine secured the historical narrative. She adhered perfectly to the rules set before her, yet still managed to project an aura of undeniable authority. While Catherine navigated this new landscape with careful sartorial choices, another senior royal offered a masterclass in a completely different approach to the royal vaults. Princess Anne, the late queen's only daughter, chose a path of deliberate abstention. During the coronation, Anne completely bypassed the complexities of gowns and tiaras. Serving as the gold stick in waiting, she wore her military uniform, riding on horseback behind the king's carriage. This was not merely a practical choice for her ceremonial duties, it was a profound visual statement. Anne did not need to compete in the hierarchy of diamonds to establish her rank. Her bloodline and her lifetime of service provided an unshakable foundation that required no further embellishment. In the months and years following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, as the contents of the royal safes were being reassigned and debuted by the new sovereign couple, the Princess Royal consistently relied on one specific, deeply personal item: her mother's signature 3-strand pearl necklace. While the Queen Consort stepped out in massive rubies and emeralds, fulfilling the visual expectations of her rank, Anne wore the pearls that the world had seen on the late monarch almost every single day of her historic reign. This was an exercise in pure soft power. By choosing the most intimate, recognizable daily staple of Queen Elizabeth, Anne communicated a clear, unwritten message. She is the living embodiment of the Elizabethan era. She requires no grand loans from the newly managed vaults to validate her standing. The pearls serve as a quiet, unbreakable link to the past, creating a boundary of heritage that massive gemstones simply cannot cross. This dynamic set the stage for how the royal collection would be utilized moving forward. Queen Camilla, operating within her rightful capacity, began to debut some of the most spectacular pieces in existence, such as the Greville Emerald Tiara and the late Queen's Sapphire Suites. These are the traditional trappings of a queen, meant to project stability and national wealth. She wore them exactly as protocol dictated. However, the true intrigue lies in what was deliberately placed upon Catherine. What followed the coronation was a series of highly calculated appearances, where Catherine wore pieces that bypassed standard diplomatic loans and stepped directly into the intimate, familial legacy of the Windsor matriarchs. She was not just borrowing jewellery, she was being positioned, piece by piece, as the undeniable inheritor of a distinctly different kind of royal authority. This strategic positioning became glaringly apparent with the release of the first official portrait of the new reign. In an image meticulously designed for the history books, King Charles and Queen Camilla stood at the center, representing the current sovereign power. Yet, positioned right beside them was Catherine, wearing the George VI festoon necklace. This three-row diamond masterpiece was commissioned by King George VI specifically for his daughter, the future Queen Elizabeth, using loose stones from the royal collection. It was not a ceremonial state piece kept behind museum glass. It was the late Queen's working jewellery, worn consistently to the state openings of Parliament and major diplomatic events for over 7 decades. The decision to place this specific necklace on Catherine for the defining portrait of the new era was far from accidental. While the King and Queen consort project the authority of the present, placing the George VI festoon on the Princess of Wales was a profound visual endorsement. It acknowledged a fundamental reality: the long-term stability and public affection required to sustain the monarchy rely heavily on Catherine's presence. She was being entrusted with the visual weight of the crown's continuity. This strategy of selective, highly significant loans deepened further in November 2023 during the South Korean state banquet. The doors of the banquet hall opened, and Catherine appeared wearing the Strathmore rose tiara. The room and the watching world were genuinely stunned. This delicate, floral diamond garland had not been seen in public for exactly a century. Originally a wedding gift to the Queen Mother in 1923 from her father, the Earl of Strathmore, it was an intensely private piece of family history belonging to the Bowes-Lyon lineage, rather than the formal crown collection. Releasing an heirloom that had vanished from public record for 100 years and trusting Catherine to bring it back to life was a deeply personal gesture from the king. It bypassed the formal state collection entirely, inviting Catherine into the innermost circle of his grandmother's private family history. While Queen Camilla wore the grand Burmese ruby tiara to the exact same event, fulfilling the requisite grandeur of her title with flawless execution, Catherine's use of the Strathmore rose captured the imagination of the press and the public in a completely different way. She wore it not low across her forehead in the original 1920s style, but high in her hair, modernizing a forgotten relic while respecting its delicate architecture. It showcased a clear divergence in how the two women approached the royal collection. Queen Camilla represents the magnificent, formal face of the institution, wearing the largest and most historically imposing pieces expected of a queen. Catherine, on the other hand, operates within the realm of emotional resonance. She does not attempt to outshine the queen consort with the sheer size of her diamonds. Instead, she captures the media's attention through the depth of the history she wears, relying on the power of sentimentality and familiar connections. This meticulous curation of history over sheer carat weight had been quietly orchestrated for years, beginning long before she assumed her current title. To truly comprehend the magnitude of her present status, one must look at the specific, heavy stones that paved her path. The ultimate endorsement from Queen Elizabeth II did not begin with the transfer of a crown. It began with the loan of the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace in 2014. This was not a standard introductory piece from the collection. The Nizam of Hyderabad was a 1930s Cartier masterpiece, a pave-set platinum structure holding massive emerald-cut diamonds. Originally gifted to Princess Elizabeth for her wedding, it was, for decades, the defining armor of her early reign. When the late Queen decided to unclasp this specific necklace and place it around Catherine's neck for a gala at the National Portrait Gallery, the message was unmistakable. It was the first time the monarch had shared a piece of such staggering financial and historical magnitude with the young royal. It was an audition on the world stage, a test to see if Catherine could carry the visual weight of the sovereign's personal power without being overwhelmed by it. She wore it with an understated dark gown, allowing the diamonds to command the room while she remained the calm center of the display. This stoic mastery of heavy, historically complex jewels became Catherine's defining signature, particularly when navigating the emotionally charged legacy of Princess Diana. The Lover's Knot tiara is perhaps the most famous example of this quiet endurance. Constructed in 1913 from 19 swinging pearls and brilliant diamond arches, it became inseparable from Diana's image in the 1980s. Yet, history records that Diana found the tiara agonizing to wear. It was notoriously heavy, inducing severe headaches, and the swinging pearls created a constant, distracting rhythm against the frame. Following Diana's tragic passing, the tiara was locked away, considered too fraught with public memory to be touched. When Catherine brought it back into the public eye in 2015, the risk was astronomical. Wearing it meant stepping directly into an almost impossible comparison. Yet, she did not just wear it once as a fleeting tribute. She transformed it into her primary state tiara for years. She handled the Lover's Knot with complete composure, showing no visible discomfort. She absorbed the complicated history of the piece and neutralized the sorrow attached to it through consistent, confident daily wear. By doing so, she demonstrated a crucial quality required of a future queen: the ability to carry the heavy chapters of the family's history without letting them define her. This ability to handle grief and gravity was further cemented by her relationship with the Japanese pearl choker. This 4-row cultured pearl choker, fastened with a curved diamond clasp, was commissioned by Queen Elizabeth from stones gifted by the Japanese government in the 1970s. While Catherine first wore it to celebrate the late Queen and Prince Philip's platinum wedding anniversary, the choker is now permanently etched in the public memory for entirely different reasons. Catherine wore this exact piece to Prince Philip's funeral at St. George's Chapel in 2021, her face partially obscured by a black mask due to pandemic restrictions. The following year, in September 2022, she wore the same pearls to the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II herself. The royal vault contains countless dark sapphires and somber brooches. Yet, the Japanese pearl choker was chosen for the two most significant losses the royal family had faced in a generation. Pearls, in royal tradition, represent silent tears. By trusting Catherine with this specific choker for these monumental global broadcasts of grief, the institution was acknowledging her as the steady, stabilizing force during its most vulnerable hours. The pearls became a visual anchor for a mourning nation, and Catherine carried that immense emotional burden flawlessly. She was not just representing the monarchy in celebration, she was trusted to be its face in absolute sorrow. The subtlety of this positioning extends even to her most frequent, seemingly mundane appearances. Consider the Bahrain pearl drop earrings. Crafted from a shell containing 7 magnificent pearls given to Princess Elizabeth as a wedding gift in 1947 by the Hakim of Bahrain, these earrings were the late Queen's everyday armor throughout the defining years of the 1950s. They frame the face of the young monarch in the iconic Dorothy Wilding portraits used on British stamps and banknotes. When Queen Elizabeth quietly passed these earrings to Catherine early in her marriage, it was not a random selection. The late monarch was drawing a deliberate visual line between her own youthful ascent to the throne and the woman who would eventually follow in her exact footsteps. By wearing the Bahrain pearls on regular royal engagements, Catherine provides a continuous, comforting visual echo spanning 7 decades. It is a private message from the late Queen made public every time Catherine steps in front of a camera. This unwavering devotion is perhaps most visible when the jewellery ceases to be merely decorative and becomes a strict heraldic decree. The Prince of Wales' feathers brooch is a prime example of this transition from personal adornment to official identification. Featuring 3 ostrich feathers encircled by a ring of diamonds and emeralds, it is the direct physical representation of the heir to the throne. First presented as a wedding gift to Princess Alexandra in 1863, it is one of the oldest relics exclusively tied to the title Catherine now holds. Every woman who has carried the title has left her distinct imprint upon it. Princess Diana frequently wore the feathers suspended as a pendant, adding a brilliant emerald drop to match her dynamic aesthetic. Queen Camilla, during her highly successful tenure as the Duchess of Cornwall, wore it pinned traditionally as a brooch, respecting its architectural weight. When Catherine assumed the title of Princess of Wales in September 2022, she did not wait long to claim this specific mantle. At the very first state visit of the new reign, welcoming the President of South Africa, she stepped out with the brooch pinned prominently to her chest. The placement was precise, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Worn right at eye level, it was not styled as a mere accessory to complement her outfit. It was worn as an unyielding badge of office. The late Queen had spent over a decade methodically testing Catherine with increasingly significant historical loans. But this moment marked a fundamental shift. Wearing the feathers signaled the exact point where Catherine stopped, simply borrowing the family's ancient history, and started actively representing it in her own right. The brooch did not make her the Princess of Wales, but pinning it to her lapel told the global audience that she completely understood the constitutional weight of what that title demanded. To understand the depth of that specific title, one must look at how Catherine has strategically drawn lines to her predecessors. Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace is a breathtaking construction of large button pearls surrounded by diamond clusters, connected by sweeping festoons. It was a wedding gift from the future King Edward VII to his bride in 1863, predating 2 world wars and the fall of multiple empires. It was engineered to be seen clearly from the back of a dim Victorian opera box, designed to announce the presence of the Princess of Wales long before she ever spoke a word. The Queen Mother eventually claimed it as a personal favourite, wearing it constantly throughout her long life. Yet, when she died in 2002, the necklace vanished into the vaults. For 16 years, it sat entirely untouched, unseen by the public, and unloaned to any member of the family. Then, in October 2018, Catherine attended a state banquet honouring the King and Queen of the Netherlands. She arrived wearing the long-hidden necklace. The choice of the occasion and the specific piece was a masterstroke of historical positioning. Alexandra was the first Princess of Wales of the modern era, a woman whose popularity and style defined a generation. By releasing a piece that had been locked away for almost 2 decades and placing it on Catherine, the late Queen Elizabeth II was engineering a direct, unbroken visual lineage. It was not a casual evening loan to fill a jewellery gap. It was a deliberate act of institutional choreography. The message was woven into the pearls. The lineage of the title was secure. This ability to navigate the complex legacy of previous title holders to honour them without imitating them was vividly displayed in December 2022 inches Boston. For the Earthshot Prize ceremony, Catherine reached for the Art Deco emerald choker. The emeralds within this piece began their royal journey as a gift to Queen Mary from the ladies of India, eventually becoming a striking, geometric masterpiece of the 1920s. For decades, it sat exactly where Queen Mary intended it, high on the throat, structured, and commanding. Then, in 1985, Princess Diana took the choker on a tour of Australia and famously snapped it across her forehead as a bandeau. It was an act of pure, electrifying defiance, taking a stiff piece of royal protocol and transforming it into something that belonged on a high-fashion runway. The image instantly became one of the most iconic of the 20th century. Following Diana's tragic passing, nobody touched the emerald choker. To wear it was to invite a direct, almost entirely unwinnable comparison to that famous moment of rebellion. Yet, Catherine brought it back. She wore it exactly as Queen Mary had originally intended, secured tightly as a choker at the base of the neck. She paired it with a vibrant green gown, blending environmental consciousness with historical reverence. Catherine executed this precisely, moving the piece forward without erasing the memory of where it had been. This profound understanding of the monarchy's visual architecture is equally evident in her relationship with Queen Mary's diamond choker bracelet. Queen Mary was, in many ways, the foundational architect of the royal aesthetic as it exists today. She collected with purpose and built a look that defined the British monarchy for generations, characterized by thick, structural layers of geometric brilliance. Her diamond choker was a crucial part of that signature, unmistakably 1920s in its construction and unyielding confidence. At some point in its history, the choker was modified into a sleek, flexible bracelet. It surfaced briefly when the Queen Mother wore it for her 75th birthday portraits in 1975, and then it simply vanished back into the shadows of the royal collection. Since 2015, this specific piece has become a regular fixture on Catherine's wrist during evening engagements. It sits there, sleek and chic, carrying the exact same quiet authority it once held at Queen Mary's throat. The late Queen did not loan this piece to Catherine simply because the princess needed another accessory to coordinate with a gown. Placing the diamonds of the woman who built the modern visual identity of the crown onto Catherine's wrist was a deliberate statement about succession. It was not a succession of the throne, but a succession of standard, style, and purpose. The late Queen recognized early on that Catherine was the woman who would eventually set the visual baseline for the next era, and Queen Mary's bracelet was her way of making that recognition official long before any titles changed hands. This trust extended far beyond the formal, structured pieces of state and ventured into the deeply complex, emotionally charged waters of private family dynamics. For decades, the lotus flower tiara was considered entirely lost to history. Originally a necklace given to the Queen Mother in the 1920s, she quickly had it dismantled and rebuilt into a tiara, incorporating Egyptian papyrus motifs into a design meant to be worn low across the forehead. It was later inherited by Princess Margaret, who wore it so frequently that the delicate, sweeping arches became inseparable from her glamorous, often turbulent public image. Following Margaret's passing, the tiara disappeared so completely that most observers assumed it had been quietly absorbed into private hands. Nobody expected to see it again. Then, Catherine walked into a diplomatic reception in December 2013, wearing the lotus flower, and the room immediately took notice. The fact that the monarch handed this particular piece to Catherine communicated something profound. This was not a safe, introductory loan, like the Cartier halo tiara she wore on her wedding day. The lotus flower carried a distinct emotional weight. Princess Margaret's vibrant, complicated personality was stamped all over it. Trusting Catherine with a jewel that belonged to such a beloved, dynamic family member was a completely different kind of endorsement. It signaled that Catherine was no longer in her introductory phase. She was being trusted with pieces that had real history, real feeling, and real stakes attached to them. Yet, the most profound demonstrations of this trust are often found in the quietest, most private creations. Prince Philip did not possess vast wealth when he proposed to Princess Elizabeth in 1946. What he did have was a tiara belonging to his mother, Princess Alice, a piece she had received from the last Tsar and Tsarina of Russia. Philip dismantled this relic of a fallen dynasty to create his bride's engagement ring. With the remaining Romanov diamonds, he personally designed a bold, geometric bracelet, working with a London jeweler to create something unmistakably Art Deco. For 73 years, Queen Elizabeth wore this bracelet. It was not a diplomatic gift or a piece from the state collection. It was a private act of love. When Catherine wore this exact bracelet to a state banquet in 2015, and again to the BAFTAs in 2017, the significance was impossible to overlook. The reigning monarch had taken her husband's most personal, romantic gift and placed it on the wrist of her grandson's wife. That is a boundary that protocol cannot dictate. That is the unspoken language of family. This steady accumulation of authority brings us to the Greville ruby necklace. Created in 1907, it features a deep, imposing V of diamonds with rubies woven through an intricate floral design. It is not a delicate piece. It demands attention and expects the person wearing it to possess the exact same gravity. Passed from the legendary society hostess Mrs. Greville to the Queen Mother, and finally to Queen Elizabeth, it became one of the late monarch's most consistently worn signatures. She did not save it solely for rare jubilees. She returned to it again and again. When Catherine wore the Greville ruby necklace at the Spanish state banquet in 2017, the progression was impossible to misread. The deep red stones that had framed the neckline of the sovereign for decades were now framing Catherine's. It was a direct, stone-by-stone transfer of authority. All of these carefully curated moments, the private romantic bracelets, the mourning pearls, the resurrected tiaras, were the necessary steps leading up to the rumors surrounding that winter night in 2025. The palace's reported decision regarding the oriental circlet was not made on a whim. It was the culmination of more than a decade of proven steadiness. Queen Camilla, holding the literal keys to the royal vault, understands the mechanics of the institution she now leads alongside the king. She wears the grandest symbols of state exactly as she should, commanding the room with the undeniable presence of a queen consort. But she, and the entire palace machinery, also recognize that the monarchy cannot survive on constitutional law alone. Royal jewelry is the most vivid, enduring language the institution possesses. While the right to open the vault is granted by a crown, the right to capture the public's heart must be earned over time. Princess Anne demonstrates this by choosing the quiet dignity of her mother's daily pearls, entirely rejecting the need to compete with diamonds. Catherine demonstrates it by wearing the weight of history with flawless, unrelenting grace. The theoretical presence of the oriental circlet resting upon her hair represents the ultimate concession from the palace, an acknowledgement that the true, invisible heritage of the monarchy does not reside entirely in the safe, but in the woman who is destined to carry it forward. This phenomenon extends far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom. When the international press analyzes a royal tour or a state banquet, the focus immediately gravitates toward the Princess of Wales and her chosen adornments. The palace machinery is acutely aware of this global reality. They recognize that in an era where the concept of monarchy is constantly questioned, public goodwill is the most fragile and essential currency they possess. The royal family cannot demand affection. They can only inspire it. And currently, the most effective vehicle for that inspiration is Catherine. The jewels are the medium, but she is the message. Queen Camilla's flawless execution of her duties and her rightful utilization of the grandest state jewels provide the monarchy with its necessary structural framework. She acts as the sturdy constitutional bridge between the Elizabethan era and whatever lies ahead. Princess Anne provides the unshakable, living link to the institution's most revered matriarch, choosing the quiet dignity of a three-strand pearl necklace over the theatre of diamonds. They both perform their roles with absolute precision. Yet, it is Catherine who is tasked with the monumental duty of ensuring the institution remains emotionally relevant to a modern, critical audience. She navigates this by treating the royal collection not as a personal dressing-up box, but as a deeply respected archive. When she reaches into that archive, she does not pull out the pieces that scream for attention. She selects the pieces that whisper of continuity. She takes the heavy, complicated relics of the Windsor women and wears them with a lightness that belies their weight. By refusing to let the history of the stones overwhelm her, she proves to the public that she is fully capable of carrying the crown itself. The heavy doors of the royal vaults will inevitably continue to swing open and shut as the current reign progresses. The distribution of the collection will continue to evolve, reflecting the shifting hierarchies within the palace walls. Yet, the true measure of power within the modern British monarchy is no longer determined solely by who holds the master key. Tangible authority is a matter of law, constitutional rights, and official titles. But the invisible heritage, the profound trust, the emotional resonance, and the unyielding loyalty of the public cannot be inherited or assigned by decree. It must be earned in the quiet, unforgiving glare of the global spotlight, day after day, year after year. The Princess of Wales does not need unfettered access to the grandest emeralds or the largest diamonds to prove her standing. Through her unwavering steadiness, her masterful understanding of the silent language of stones, and her deep respect for the legacy of the women who came before her, she has transcended the need for such traditional validations. In the intricate, constantly shifting dynamics of the royal family, Catherine has quietly and definitively positioned herself not just as the future of the crown, but as the very heart of it. Thank you for joining us in uncovering this silent language of the crown. We hope this exploration into the hidden diplomacy of royal jewellery has provided a new perspective on how history is worn and power is transitioned. If you have any further thoughts on these historical dynamics, or if you noticed a detail we might have missed, please share them respectfully in the comments below. Subscribe and join us next time as we continue to decode the fascinating world of royal history.